In 2014, when Dr. Snavely called me, I was at a desk in Visalia Unified, and he asked me if I would take the position. And I was so overwhelmed because I literally said these words. I said, Dr. Snavely, I promise I won't let you down. I go, you're giving me my dream job, and I'm going into the major leagues of public education. And I'll never forget that conversation. He was honorable in how he offered me the position, and then the conversation that we had, and it led to being here at the school where staff was not necessarily trusting an administrator, and there was some past hurt and pain, and then students were disenfranchised, and there was just a lot of knocking of heads. And so I got to come in, and my first day of school I saw posturing, and I just saw none of the students were really talking with themselves, and there was no interaction with staff. And 7 years later, I look at what our lunch, and what our lunches look like, and nobody eats lunch alone, unless you want to be left alone, and there's conversation and there's rich engagement. And so I've had like the best 7 years of my professional 25 years in public education. The best 7 years I've been right here in Porterville Unified, and I will always thank Dr. Snavely, and then also the assistant soups that allowed me to have opportunity. My wife and I several years ago knew we had a bucket list, 100 things that we wanted to do in our life, and things like write a book, and things like start your own foundation, and things like travel all over the world, and things like start and build an orphanage, and build a school, and build a home for needy people. And so my wife Cheryl and I decided, after our kids had graduated college and they're now living their lives, we said that this would be the time that we would do it. And so in 2011 we started our nonprofit, Legacy Incorporated, and knowing that this day would come, and we're just going from one passion to another passion. And I love the staff, I love the students, I love Porterville, I love leadership, and I have just really been blessed to be a part of this whole dynamic. It's really quite interesting. We only have 50 students that are wanting to be on our campus. Again, our school is small. We never really have more than 250, 260 students. And so of these 50 that I've been able to have conversations with, they're resilient. That's the one thing I've learned, not just with students in the state of California, but students and continuation students in Porterville. They really are resilient. Many of them have been dealt a bad hand, and they've had to overcome so many crises or tragedies or challenges, and to come back and for them to say, hey, I'm just happy to be back. I'm like, yeah, you had this deprived from you, and the pandemic took this from you and stole that from you. Not that I say that to them, but it's implied. We're all living. And I'm just happy to be back. It feels good to be back. And I think that's been one of the lessons that I've always tried to hold on to, is that it's not about what I can teach the students. They're teaching me all the time. And it really, it's that Chinese proverb, you want to understand people, walk a mile in their shoes. And these young people are resilient. I call them my heroes. I always salute them because they deserve it. Citrus High School is a magical place. And when I say that, I don't just use that word lightly. Every single day there's magic that happens. Over the years I've recorded voice messages. I've saved emails. I've saved the cards. And I've recorded in journals the commendations or compliments or praises. And I can tell you that woven throughout this entire community are numerous praises and commendations to this staff. I'm most proud that they literally leave it all out on the field. If I ask them to leave it all out on the field, they're going to leave it all out. They're not going to have an ounce of energy left. There's not a lot of hills that I'll die on, but there have been the hills like we will win hearts and we will win minds. That's what we're about. And I will side and advocate for a young person so that they can understand who they are, how significant they are, and that they can come into a reality of who they are as a human being. And if that means me having to be strong enough to take the onslaught of verbal, whatever it might be, if that takes me trying to humble myself to understand them more deeply, then I'm going to do that, and my staff is going to do that. And I'm most proud that the staff literally does that. They literally will woo these kids. I'm proud of that. I'm proud that they engage, that they can connect. Students can connect with at least one adult. I'd say all 21 adults at the site. They can connect with them because they're available and they're approachable, and they truly, truly care. It almost brings me to tears just thinking about it, but I'll do my best to share this story. His name is David, and I had the opportunity to teach a class, a leadership class. I wanted to get my pedagogy that I was asking teachers to work on. I wanted to refine some elements of my instructional practice, and so I asked my leadership teacher if I could go into his class and take the next 6 weeks and teach some leadership lessons. And he said, yeah, absolutely. So his name is David. He's just a big, huge kid and no affect. There was nothing on his disposition for the first few weeks. And I thought to myself, I want to get to know David more. He wasn't insubordinate. He wasn't defiant. He just didn't have an affect. I didn't know him. One day he was shooting a basketball out here on the court. And I looked out and I saw him, and he sunk like a 3-pointer. And I go, great shot, Dave. That's it. I just said those words, great shot, Dave. And he kind of smiled at me, and I saw the affect. Well, lo and behold, the next time we had a leadership class meeting, I noticed that there was more engagement. And I then asked him to come into my office on a particular day. And I said, hey, Dave, tell me your story. And he started sharing a little bit about how he was raised in this community and how his mother and father split when he was in 3rd grade. His dad was an alcoholic and was abusive, and so they had to split. And the day that he actually tried to intervene and stop his father from hurting his mother, I mean, he was sharing all this stuff, and I was overwhelmed that he felt safe enough to share this information with me, and how he had to provide. He worked in the fields beginning at a very young age. He was working to help with the family, and Dave and I became just really close. Well, at the end of the year, my sister, who's in Tulare, asked me to come to her 6th grade class and inspire the kids. So I said, I'll do that if I can bring a student. And she said, okay. So I take Dave and I go over there and we have fun, and I inspire the kids, and I tear a phone book like I've done for PUSD before, and I break a baseball bat, and I encourage them to not give up in life and keep shooting for their goals and all the traditional things that you would say. And I said, but before I go any further, I just want my friend David. I go, he's actually my student. And I want him to share with you a couple things. He's going to just take 30 seconds. And so Dave takes the microphone and he shares for 30 seconds and tells a little bit of a story, encourages the kids. And then on the way back home, he's driving with me, and there's another student in the back, and I give him an envelope with some money in it. I didn't ask my wife's permission. I just gave him a significant amount of money. I said, well, you know, whenever you speak and you get paid for it, then you're called a professional speaker, so you're a professional speaker. He said, oh, thanks, Mr. Braden. Well, at the end of the year, graduation's taking place. The lights are about ready to go out. Jose's going to cut the lights, and we're going to go home. There's nobody here. All of a sudden, I hear this, Mr. Braden. And I look through the darkness, and I see that it's David, and it's David and his mom. He goes, I just want to introduce you to my mom. And so I just start praising him. I said, do you know how special your son is? He was in my leadership class, and she was crying and all that kind of good stuff. I said, I just really, really honored to know your son. I'm proud of him, and I know you are too, and you must be an amazing woman. And we had that kind of a conversation. And so he leaves. And so as I'm just about ready to head out the gate, all of a sudden, David comes right up to me, and he gives me a big hug. And he literally says these words. He goes, Mr. Braden, you're like the father I never had. So I try to do my best to honor that story, but there are so many Davids in this school that have taught me the power of resiliency, and these kids are amazing, and I love them. That's what I'm going to miss. That's what I'm most proud of. And it's been a beautiful journey. When you live life and you are around people that have a growth mindset, who is always looking for that opportunity in that moment, that capacity, that resource, that relationship, that location. When you have a person that wants to maximize all of their potential and their gifts, then you're around a person that can help mold and shape your dreams and your realities. And then when you really think about it, I talked yesterday to a 96-year-old man. Every week I talk to him, and he's always imparting a particular lesson, life lesson, or something new about him. And when I talked to him, he was sharing with me how he was still learning language. And I'm thinking, at 96 years old, he's learned French, he knows English, he's played around with German and Russian. He's still learning language, he's still growing. And one of the sweetest things he said is, he said, Scott, I just want to leave you in this conversation. Just remember, one of the things, because his wife had just passed about 6 months ago, he goes, one of the things I want you to always remember from this day forward is, you don't always have to be right. And I want you to have that peace in your heart. You don't always have to be right. That's a 96-year-old man who's lived twice as much life as I have, and I'm learning from him, and he's got a growth mindset. Those are the people that rub shoulders with you. As iron sharpens iron, so one individual sharpens another. But those that have a fixed mindset, those are the dream breakers. Oh, you can't do that. You're not smart enough. You're not good enough. How are you going to do that? What about this? What about that? And I think about these people like Martin Luther King, all these great people that have walked this planet Earth and have had great dreams and have accomplished great dreams. If they listened to those people that were on the sidelines or in the stands, and they didn't get into the front lines, well, they got into the front lines because they had people with growth mindsets. They had people that were molding and shaping their greatness. And so if I could say anything to any person in PUSD, is a growth mindset does not mean that you're sacrificing anything. It doesn't mean that you're giving up your identity. It just means that you're open to doing what you are doing professionally, learning and growing. And you model it, and you do it, and you bring greatness into the classroom. So in the state of California, there's 500 continuation schools. There's 10,000 schools in the state of California, K-12, and there's 500 that are continuation. And when I became a continuation high school principal, I thought to myself, what does an exemplary continuation high school look like? And so I began to do some research, and I identified an organization called CCEA, and they were California Continuation Education Association, and they had identified what they considered to be modeled continuation high schools. And at the time, there was like 30 something of those 500 schools that were considered model continuation high schools. I looked through all of their literature. I went to one of their conferences, and I identified that there was about 178 variables that these 30 schools had done well. And I brought them back to the staff. And I said, on a scale from 1 to 10, all 178, this was in a series of PDs that we done, I said, where are we at on this scale? Because this is exemplary, and this is what kids deserve. And we went through everything. Every system was represented in those 178 variables. And you had to think about the way it looked, and the way that you approached, and the way that you taught, and how much of a growth mindset you had, how relational you were. And the staff in the first year went through it, and I could tell that that particular staff did not believe that they had the potential to be any part of that 178. But by year 2, when we had a visit from 2 individuals that were from model school, and they said, you are doing amazing things here, and we're going to recommend, we can't guarantee, but we're going to recommend that you be considered for model school. And when I got the phone call from the State Department of Education that said, we indeed see that you are model school, that second year, those teachers were honored, but they didn't believe it. They didn't believe it. And you can't achieve it, they say, until you believe it. And I literally saw that. Year 6 last year, we get the phone call, we are indeed model school. And every single one of these staff members, they know it. And I think what I was so honored to be part of is to just see a willingness to say, we want to get better. We're not where we want to be, but we're not where we used to be. So let's just make each other better in this process. And when the students know that they're model school and the teachers know that they're model school, that's a safe place. That's a loving place. That's a place where you can learn. And that's not just a place where you learn, that's a place where you start to thrive. Because before model school, we survived. After model school, we were thriving. I tell people all the time, parents and students, this is my first story. I won't say who it is, but I was at Stafford Chocolate and I had found out that they had gourmet chocolate. My mom loves chocolate, so I'm buying her some gourmet chocolate. And the lady there goes, "Hey, you're new to the Ville." I go, "Excuse me?" She goes, "You're new to the Ville, Porterville." I go, "You call it the Ville?" She says, "Yeah, we call it the Ville." I go, "You must be here for a long time, huh?" She goes, "Yeah." So she was very nice and accommodating. And she says, "So what do you do?" I go, "Well, I'm a principal over at Citrus High School here in Porterville Unified." She goes, "Oh, no." She makes a sign of the cross. She says, "I'm so sorry for you." I go, "What do you mean?" She says, "Oh, those kids will have your cars up on blocks in no time." I go, "Shut up." She goes, "Well, I'm just teasing." She goes, "But when I was a kid, that was a rough place to go, to Citrus High School." And so that was my first conversation about Citrus High School. And so I tell people that, hey, I'm so sorry that you have to be at a school that I have to be at. I'm so sorry about that. And they start laughing after they get to know me that I'm just joking around with them. The truth of the matter is, I tell every parent, I go, it's magical. It has a perception like anything in life. People have their past experience, their past story. They have something to say about Citrus. I go, but what I want you to do is I want you to look at us. And from this day forward, you get to evaluate how we do things. Any given time, you can go into a classroom. Any given time, you can talk to anybody here. We're transparent. We're open. We're approachable. And we will even be vulnerable. We may hear something that you say that hurts us. We don't like it. Doesn't make us feel good. But we're going to learn from it. This is a big family. You can go talk to anybody. We've had people all over this community that have come through this school and graduated, and they got a high school diploma, and it's the same high school diploma as any other school in this town. I go, the truth of the matter is, I don't want you to judge Citrus by what you hear. I want you to judge Citrus by what you experience from this day forward. And if at any given time you don't feel safe or comfortable or feel like this is the right place, you need to see me immediately, and we will do whatever we can to serve you. Just those words, I think, at times have just really kind of de-escalated the potential threat or something that could go awry and wrong for students and parents. And I've had many parents that I've showed around, taken to classes. And so I always tell parents, I go, it's a magical place. We're not going to treat you like any other school. I can promise you that. And I'll give you your money back. And they'll start laughing.